What's nicer than a great big plate of fresh asparagus all by itself? It's the most marvelous way to begin a meal. And I think it's just irresistible.
On the next episode of That's So Savvy podcast, we're diving into the extraordinary world of one of the most iconic figures in American culinary history, Julia Child. And joining me is someone who knows Julia's legacy inside, out, and backwards, Todd Shulkin, Executive Director of the Julia Child Foundation. We talk about Julia's infectious spirit, the stories people don't know, and how the foundation is carrying her visionary legacy into the future.
She's the last person you would cast, at least in central casting, to star in a cooking show. She's too tall. She has a funny voice. She's goofy. Like, not at all what would be on paper. But because of that, she's so relatable. And then she was so authentically herself and so enthusiastic. Those all made her beloved.
If you adore Julia Child like I do, you love stories about passion and purpose, or you just want to be inspired, this episode is absolutely for you. Don't miss it. Coming out soon on That's So Savvy podcast.
Welcome to That's So Savvy, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories and journeys of remarkable business leaders. Join our host, Nancy Aichholz, a seasoned professional and experienced entrepreneur, on her mission to discover the recipe for business success.
Welcome to That's So Savvy podcast, where we dive deep into what makes businesses, and more importantly, the people behind them, so successful. I'm your host, Nancy Aichholz. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a former brand marketing executive, nonprofit leader, and the founder of That's So Sweet and Nan Cakes. I've spent my career building brands and businesses, mentoring women, and creating savvy strategies that work. In season 3, we're going all in on the savvy business of food. From fast, casual giants and small but mighty food options to mission-driven food nonprofits and bold culinary innovators. This season is all about the people reimagining what we eat, how we eat, and why food businesses matter more than ever. You'll hear straight talk from founders, chefs, CPG disruptors, grocery execs, and purpose-driven changemakers. We'll unpack what's working in the industry, from branding and packaging to scaling and storytelling, and what it really takes to build a food brand that sticks to your ribs, as they say. Whether you're a food lover, aspiring founder, or seasoned entrepreneur, or a full-blown food executive, this season will feed your mind, your soul, and maybe even your next big idea. So grab your favorite drink, or better yet, a cookie, and let's get savvy. That's So Savvy podcast is supported by wonderful listeners like you. If you would like to hear more of our podcast and be more involved, please go to patreon.com, patreon.com, and you can donate as little as $5 a month or as much as you'd like to support That's So Savvy podcast. If you'd like to advertise and reach our rapidly growing audience, please email us at thatssosavvypod, P-O-D, @gmail.com. thatssosavvypod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And we look forward to bringing That's So Savvy podcast to you for a very long time in the future. Welcome back, savvy listeners. We're here to make you hungry this season. I am here with my good friend, Roger David. He's the CEO of Gold Star GSR Brands. And I know Roger from lots of different ways, but what I really know about him is he is one of the best branding people I've ever known. And not just food, he just gets it. It's just an intuition with him. So we're going to have so much fun talking about his family history in the food business, kind of what he's done in the industry, how he's revolutionized something that has been around for a long time and making it very new. Roger, who is Roger David?
Thank you for that. That was great, Nancy. So appreciate being here and your kind words.
Of course.
Thank you. So who is Roger David? Wow. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Love it.
And my father immigrated to this country in the late 50s, spent some time here, then went back to Jordan and got married and then came back to the United States and had me here. I'm
Nice.
one of four.
Boys?
No, actually, 2 boys, 2 girls. My brother passed away when I was 17 from leukemia. He's 12, which was tough. But my father comes from 10 brothers and sisters, and my mother has 10 brothers and sisters as well. So I have a huge family.
Yeah. Are they all here now, or are they?
No, they're scattered all over. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You're in the food industry because your family has been in the food industry.
Yeah.
But why are you in it?
As I said, I was born and raised here. And so that was around the same time my father got involved in the restaurant business with 3 of his brothers.
Okay.
And they bought a restaurant called Hamburger Heaven, which was located in Mount Washington, Ohio. And with it came a recipe for Cincinnati style chili. And so after running that location for a while, I actually remember as a little kid going to the restaurant with my dad. I just was born into it. And so it's kind of, he would bring cheese coneys home for lunch or dinner or whatever it might be. I had no idea he was getting them for free, basically. It's
You're
just,
thinking,
that's
wow,
just the way
Dad.
it was. Yeah, this is great. And so after I graduated from college, I went to UC for undergrad and then Xavier for grad school. I worked at the corporate office for about 10 years in the marketing capacity, then left for about 15.
I remember that.
And then came back 10 years ago as the CEO of the company. And so
And you were
it's
with
been
a
fun.
branding agency at that point, right?
I was with a design firm in town that did a lot of brand strategy for consumer packaged goods as well as retailers. And
Right. So
it was
you've
good.
got that perspective outside of just the restaurant industry, but still consumer goods, probably mostly food type businesses.
Yeah.
But so for our listeners who aren't Cincinnatians, because you do have a lot of those, what's this mystery or this attraction around chili in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Like, how can we explain that to somebody who's not from here?
It could be a tough one if we have enough time.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that every region's got its own little thing. For Cincinnati, it's Cincinnati style chili. It's funny though, when I explain it, I say it's Cincinnati style chili, but we really aren't selling chili. We're selling 3-ways and we're selling cheese coneys.
Right.
So you've heard of a chili dog? Well, that's our cheese coney. Now, a 3-way is a little bit harder to explain when you take spaghetti and you're putting chili on top and you can add onions or beans and then this great kind of mild cheddar cheese that goes on top.
Cheese is the best.
Yeah. And so that one's a little bit, that's a little bit more of a head scratcher for them, but it seems to work for us Cincinnatians. And so
it sure does.
Yeah.
And I make this, I think, really great Texas style chili.
Yeah.
And now that I have 3 kids living in Texas, my daughter uses that recipe and she puts it on spaghetti. Right? And she tells her friends, this is how you're actually supposed to eat chili. And at first they think she's crazy, but then they eat it and they're like, you're right. I'm like, it just needs something.
Yeah,
That's what it needs. She makes kind of our version of a Gold Star, but it's Texas style. And so I'm not trying to, I can't
You're
copy.
not trying to compete.
I can't copy. No, you guys have the market down on that. So as you now have come back to Gold Star as the CEO, and when I was looking at your bio, I'm like, you've been back there 15 years?
10 years as the CEO. Yeah.
It's been 10 years already?
Yeah,
That's crazy. Life goes by too fast. So when you came back, what was it like?
Yeah.
What was it like to rejoin the family? What did you feel like you had kind of free reign to say, okay, it's time to make some innovation here?
Yes. It's interesting. One is I will say that the family has been extremely supportive over those 10 years. I will say they didn't make it easy for me to get the job, however.
Oh, that's probably good.
Which is probably good, right? When you look back. For the first, I would say, 20 years of the organization, it was family led by the original founders. The 4 brothers were kind of leading the charge. And then for the next 20 years, actually even longer, 30 years, it was kind of non-family run. So we had non-family in the position of the CEO. And so for the family to say, hey, we're going to put a family member back in that seat was a big step for them. And they took a big chance, and as I did, and I will say that it's worked out really, really well. When I arrived 10 years ago, coming from that branding background that you were mentioning, it was clear to me that the entire chili category itself had no meaningful differentiation between one brand and the next. Now, you could get into the fine details of convenience of location or menu price or maybe even service levels, but at the end of the day, the concept didn't have a meaningful point of difference. And so then my journey began at that point, is how do we go about creating a meaningful point of difference? Not only to create a meaningful point of difference, but to create one that's defensible. So how do you create one that's defensible, right? And so if you look back at our history, what's different about Gold Star's history is we started in the burger business and then we transitioned to the chili business. Well, no other brand out there started in the burger business and transitioned to chili. So for me, that gave us a little bit of consumer kind of alignment to explore that area.
Right.
Tagline was, well, we're bringing the burgers back, baby, kind of thing. It was the whole idea.
Okay.
And so we knew that meaningful differentiation had three components to it. It had a menu component to it. It had a facility upgrade component to it. And it had a service level upgrade as a portion of that. And so we began our journey kind of trying to nail those three things down.
Yeah.
So we put singles and doubles on the menu. We added shakes. We added a garlic parmesan fry. And then ultimately we added a fried chicken sandwich, and we kind of expanded that menu. While we were expanding the menu, our volumes were going up as we were remodeling locations and relocating certain locations. It became also an exit strategy for some franchisees that have been with us for a long time.
Okay.
So there were a lot of things kind of coming to head. And over the course of that 10 years, I would say, we've remodeled all the locations. We've put the new menu in place, upgraded the service levels, and we've had great results from all of those efforts. So that's been great. The nice thing about that is we've positioned the brand for growth outside of Cincinnati now, right?
Nice, right.
So we have a more diversified menu that's going to be able to play in other markets. And we removed the word chili from our logo. So we're no longer Gold Star Chili.
Yeah.
We're actually just Gold Star now. And I think that kind of begins to change people's perceptions of what we're selling. If you go out of town and somebody comes in and orders a bowl of chili, that's why I say I'm not really in the chili business. I'm in the coney business, and I'm in the burger business, and I'm in the fry business.
Yeah.
Because nobody is eating chili in the bowl, at least not Cincinnati style.
Exactly.
It's not our most popular dish.
Right. Exactly. I love that philosophy. I love that approach, because it used to be almost just a taste preference between Gold Star and Skyline. Yeah. Right.
And the subjective brand components of who you may or may not aligned with. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And then whose jingle you liked better, or which sports teams, or whatever. So now it really is about the food,
the offering,
and the experience in the store, which is now very different from your direct competitor in Cincinnati. Yeah. I know that they've expanded a little bit outside the Cincinnati footprint too. Yeah. So you might have run into that elsewhere anyway. Yeah. So that was probably really brilliant, honestly.
We've learned a lot from our out-of-town expansion that has failed. So, if you want to talk about learning from failure.
Sure. That's
just because something works in Cincinnati and it's taking all of these years to develop it, doesn't mean that you're going to go open. We opened in New York. We opened in Philadelphia. We were in Orlando. We were in St. Louis. We're in a lot of cities.
I had no idea.
And just never really kind of took off. And because it's a slow burn and your menu is very defined.
Right.
Now, today, I think we're much more equipped to manage an out-of-town kind of approach.
So what is your footprint these days?
Today, primarily Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana.
Okay. Yeah. And how many stores do you all have?
We have 65 locations.
Okay. Yeah. And how many are corporate-owned versus franchise?
We're about 20% corporate-owned, but I predict probably moving that to 30 and 40%.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. The franchise industry is
tough and changing.
It is tough. Yeah, so what are you seeing out there as the biggest changes coming for not just franchises, but for the restaurant industry as people change the way they experience their eating out?
I obviously love food beyond just our products.
We've got that in common.
And so I the options that are available to the consumer today and the variety of ethnic cuisine that's out there is absolutely incredible. In addition to that, you have staple brands that are providing some of those different flavor profiles as well. And so matrix of flavors that exist today that didn't exist 25 years ago to the average consumer is incredible in itself. At the same time, the hurdle to get in the restaurant business is relatively low.
But
it seemed like anybody who had a tattoo wanted to get in the restaurant business all of a sudden. And so now you've got somebody back there cooking up some grub for somebody in 1,000 square feet in a low rent kind of location, but has built a reputation for the food, which has been fantastic, I think, for consumers. When you look at our concept where it's much more capital intensive. It might take $1.5 million to open one. So then your pool of people that are interested in doing something like that isn't quite as big, right? There are less expensive ways to get in the business. And so it makes franchising a little bit more challenging for us.
Sure.
Which is why I mentioned we probably will grow from more corporate locations. Okay. So that percentage will increase.
One thing that I've really paid attention to recently is the cost of inventory, just the cost of food. Yeah. And we're seeing it everywhere. It's every restaurant, it's the grocery store, it's everything. One concern I have just as a consumer is that things go up, they never come back down again, it seems like. How are we going to navigate, or what are you seeing out there of the huge costs that happened about 1.5 years or so ago, and then all the increases, and then that horrible egg situation, which did come back down and resolve itself to some extent. But what are we going to do about, used to be that you could go to Gold Star and take your family and it was whatever, $50. Now it's probably $150 if you take a whole family.
Our average ticket has definitely grown over the years, and to the point where we used to be competing more in that QSR, that fast food segment, versus the fast casual, casual dining segment, fast casual. Our ticket price now resembles more of the Chipotles, the Paneras, kind of those guys, right?
I would think.
But you do see a lot of activity within the fast food guys that are providing economic incentives to come in. So deals are out there to be had if you're looking for a deal. It's just that deals cost you money, right? And so it's a little bit of a loss leader in a sense, almost.
Exactly. It gets
where you're just trying to get people in, build traffic, keep things moving, but the margins aren't necessarily there. Our approach is to try to find that balance between some economic incentives and otherwise. But it is certainly a challenge. And, the industry tries to keep, roughly speaking, a 30% cost of goods. And so you try to make sure you're hitting that mark, both with your pricing and with your purchasing.
Right, which is a never ending sliding scale.
Right. The burgers at McDonald's certainly shrunk over the years. And I think recently they just announced that they're going to try to take them back to their original size. There have been many lawsuits about photos that don't necessarily represent the end product. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Now with all the options out there now, and you're right, even just looking around Cincinnati, it's so fun to see these different ethnic restaurants popping up and doing really well and sticking around, and it's great. But how do you create loyalty with this new? You have your old guard people that want the cheese coney, their 3-way. They want to come to Gold Star for that. They're always going to be around. But how are you creating the loyalty then with this new approach?
So one is actually we're launching a loyalty program.
What do you know?
So that was a great segue.
That.
Right. That was great. One is we want to reward those guests. And so that whole piece is in place. We've got over 32,000 members currently, and we just recently launched it. So we're excited about the potential of that, because the cost of a transaction marketing to that group is much less than marketing to the masses, right? So we've got to be as efficient as we can with our marketing dollars. And so that certainly on the loyalty side, that's a more direct approach to answering your question. Right. The more indirect approach is to try to get more frequency because of a broader menu, right?
Right.
So the more frequency I get from you, then I would claim that I'm building more loyalty. but I'm also putting myself in a much broader competitive set, right?
Sure.
So the food's got to deliver, the service has got to deliver, the convenience factor's got to deliver, the value's got to deliver. So all these things got to come together, and we got to win you over. And ultimately, there is some emotion in that decision. I don't care what people say. They get to know their server, they get to know the owner of the restaurant, they get to know the manager, and there's a sense of community that we try to build.
Now, how are you doing with the current labor market and getting, like you said, if that's a part of the loyalty from the consumer, how are you hiring the best and keeping the best?
Yeah. And that's always a challenge.
Yeah, it is in that industry. In any.
The turnover rate in the industry is high. Fortunately, we do better than the average. I think it's really about establishing community within our group. And it's that personal relationship that you're able to create from one restaurant to the next, and the sharing of information and establishing that community where you feel you're part of something bigger than just clocking in and clocking out at that location.
Right. Yeah.
I think that helps, but it's an ongoing challenge.
Right. What would you say for you all have been the really specific challenges, and not just necessarily currently, but what's unique to Gold Star in the food industry that you would say are challenges that you've had, that you've overcome, that others could learn from, that maybe you don't want to have to go back and have those challenges again?
I think a couple things, and it's not terribly uncommon in our business, but when I arrived at Gold Star, we had 90 locations, right? We didn't talk about that part.
Yeah.
And so we had to, what I call pruning, we had to prune the system, identify the locations that we thought had potential to continue to grow, identify locations where franchisees wanted to retire, but yet we didn't want to necessarily take that particular spot that they occupied. And so over the course of those 10 years, we shrank by a third as far as the number of units, the number of outlets available. At the same time, we were relocating some of them and tripling their previous sales, quadrupling previous sales. So over that time, we didn't lose any kind of system-wide sales. So we shrunk the company down and grew, which I would have never put on a piece of paper and tried to sell you on, because it just seems like, but it worked for us.
Right, it's counterintuitive, but it worked.
It worked for us. And so I would say then, one is don't be fearful of doing the right thing, even though on the surface it might cost you a little bit. In our case, it worked out pretty well. And then I would say always strive to kind of find meaningful differentiation at the brand level, because everything's so commoditized at times. And sometimes that meaningful differentiation might be very subjective, but the more objective you can make it, the better off you're going to be.
Right. Like, look at the numbers.
Yeah.
So what happens if a franchisee wants to get out of the business? What happens?
So if their franchise agreement has expired, then they can just exit stage left, I guess.
Okay. But who owns the property? Do they own it?
So they may own it or they may not own it. They may lease it. Oftentimes we may own it and we lease it back to them. It all depends on kind of that structure that they may have. Oftentimes leases will marry the same time periods that the franchise agreement will.
Sure.
Right. So they go kind of hand in hand, so you don't get stuck one way or the other. Our business is kind of interesting, though. Cincinnati is such a huge chili town. I will tell you that as we were growing, we had at one point more locations than McDonald's had in Cincinnati. We had more locations than Wendy's and Burger King combined in Cincinnati. And that's just the Gold Star brand.
Right.
And there are other brands in this market selling Cincinnati style chili. So when you combine our brand with the other brands and you look at their system-wide sales, it's remarkable. Now, that's just the restaurant side. In the grocery store side, the amount of Cincinnati style chili that sells in the grocery side, both frozen and canned. By the way, we're the number one selling entree in both units and dollars in the frozen food section, which is fantastic.
That's impressive.
More Cincinnati style chili sold in Cincinnati than vanilla ice cream.
Oh my gosh. Don't tell graders.
Right, yeah. So it's absolutely amazing how popular this item is in this region. You would think there's got to be a way to get this in other markets, right?
Right,
and so we'll keep trying.
Right.
Keep trying.
Have you seen traction in the grocery side in other markets?
No, it's been very nominal,
local?
very
Yeah.
local.
Yeah.
The majority of the sales are very concentrated here.
Okay.
And it almost, what we do in Cincinnati style chili here puts the national brands to shame in this market. National brands, if you take their entire footprint across the country, it's a big number. But if you look at what our sales are in Cincinnati compared to
theirs?
like the Hormels of the world or whoever else is in a can out there, you would be shocked.
Right.
You'd be shocked.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah.
So for our non-Cincinnati listeners, I think one thing to really understand is that there is a chili war.
Yeah.
And so it's a friendly war. We all get along. It appears to be a similar product. And so if you just want Cincinnati chili, then you have some choices. And I think one way to compare it might be that when I go into a restaurant and I order a Diet Coke and they say, is Diet Pepsi okay? I say,
not anymore.
Can I have an iced tea?
Now we're all Coke. We're all Coke now. We switched to Coke. Our main competitor switched to Coke, and we happen to switch about the exact same time, which is very interesting.
Okay, so I probably just made the Pepsi people unhappy. I like a lot of their other things. I love that.
But we were with Pepsi for 59 years, and we are now with Coke for 1.
Yeah, so I probably drank water or iced tea. Or maybe I would just okay, I'll go with it.
Yeah.
But so for our non-Cincinnati listeners, that's kind of what this is like.
Yeah.
But you were telling me earlier when we were chatting, something that I knew but had forgotten is that neither one of you invented this in Cincinnati.
No. So the first brand that opened up a restaurant that sold Cincinnati style chili was Empress in the late 1920s. And they were followed by Dixie Chili.
I forgot about that.
So Empress and Dixie were the first two. And then in the 40s, Skyline Chili came around. And in the mid-60s, we're celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. In the mid-60s is when Gold Star came about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of the history behind it. But Empress really deserves all the credit. I cannot, and I had the privilege of meeting some of the Empress family who don't really have very many locations any longer. I think they have a couple. And basically thanking them, because I think if it wasn't for them, I don't know where my family would be today, in a sense. So they created
they'd be selling
something.
Burgers.
Yeah, they'd be selling burgers probably. They created so many opportunities for so many folks. It's a true American dream kind of story.
Yeah.
And a lot of immigrants that started in that business.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, if you're not from this region, we have such a rich immigrant history in Cincinnati, and it's so cohesive and supportive. It's a great history of all of our food. I've got everything Greek, German, Asian, everything, Italian.
Yeah.
And
we have a great food scene. Yeah.
We really do.
Yeah.
And we have lots of great food festivals here.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your branding background, which is really paid off in the food industry for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of my passions too. And I've largely been in the food industry all along, a variety of other things, but mostly that's been my direction. Let's talk a little bit about branding and your background in that, and maybe some experiences that you had during the time that you weren't directly in the food industry.
Yeah. Interesting. When I was consulting, it was all about creating points of difference, right? In order to create kind of the platform. And we were doing a lot of work for, at that time, Lowe's Home Improvement. Oh. And so you may have had a brand like Hitachi, for example, that wasn't in the drill category, but Hitachi wanted to get in the drill category. Well, how do you carve out a niche in the drill category, right?
Right.
And so we would do things along. So I had a great foundation to kind of learn how to kind of really get in there and understand the differences between the brands and what their offerings are. And so when I left there, I became the CEO of Buffalo Wings and Rings.
I remember that.
It was really kind of a turnaround opportunity.
Was that your family also?
It was not. It was kind of distant maybe, but it started here in Cincinnati as well. And kind of a sports wings focus bar and restaurant. They were kind of in the shadows of Buffalo Wild Wings at the time, right? And so they saw the success that Buffalo Wild Wings were having. And they kind of just naturally, you would say, okay, well, we can do a sports related concept as well. So when I got there, it was clear that I thought that their food was good, much better than Buffalo Wild Wings. And I noticed that their environments, they had TVs versus the screens, the projector screens, to kind of play the games and stuff. Where Buffalo Wild Wings, you would go in, it was dark. They needed that darkness in order to make those screens work well.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like you were in a den, like a dude's den, you know? And so I remember taking my family before I took the job at Buffalo Wings and Rings. And we just went to a Buffalo Wild Wings and we identified the experiences not being family friendly and not a place my wife would go in the middle of the day to watch a game.
Right.
Because it's just this dark dungeon kind of thing. Then I went to Buffalo Wings and Rings and they had TVs when their big screen TVs were coming out. And so they had natural light in there, but they still kind of had this like barish vibe. And so we decided to, one, put food in china versus in paper boats and elevate the food perception. And then at the same time, elevate the dining experience and make it more family friendly. So let's be a restaurant first and a bar second versus a bar first that serves food.
Right.
That was kind of the beginning of creating another meaningful point of difference between the two competitors in the place. And we tripled their average unit volume as we were growing that brand. And so I had some of that experience I was able to also bring into the Gold Star side.
Sure.
With a really solid foundation when I was doing that consulting work on the CPG and the retailer sides.
Don't you love how it all just builds on itself?
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It's different when you're consulting, you're providing that guidance and you're hoping that the client executes. But when you're doing it, you're going to execute, right? So it's like, okay, I think I know what to do. I've got the playbook here.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to I'm going to execute and see the results.
Yeah, that was
so fulfilling.
So fun. Yeah. Your history, your career has just been, it's one I love to just kind of follow because I know you're always going to do great things. And there's so much great history. Yeah. It's so rich. The history is so rich. And Gold Star is such a part of the Cincinnati environment.
The fabric,
it just is, exactly. And I think it'll be the same wherever you take it. It'll become that over time. So that's super exciting. Kind of wrapping up here. Being in the food industry and being around food all the time, what's your favorite food hack?
Oh, wow. So one is I'm a sauce guy. So I love putting sauce on a lot of stuff. And I really like the visual, right? I want to make it beautiful on the plate and all of that. But it's kind of funny though, on Sunday mornings, sometimes I'd make breakfast for my 3 kids. And I would and they wanted everything plain, which drove me crazy. And I would try to do something to make it extra special or challenge their taste buds a little bit or whatever. So over time, it didn't always pan out the way I would want it to. And they finally decided that my restaurant name would be My Way Diner because it's going to only be my way. It's the only way they were going to get their food was the way I wanted to prepare it. So they would make fun of me for that. But I will say, though, that my youngest, Margot, she hated ketchup and peanut butter and jelly, which is so strange.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
And then my oldest, she only would only eat plain things. And then my son, he was pretty adventurous. He was eating all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, the short order cook for a while there when they're little.
Yeah. My Way Cafe.
Yeah. But now I bet they have very broad taste buds, and they're probably very eclectic in their
what's funny? They always send me pictures of food wherever they're dining.
Oh, isn't that awesome?
Which is everybody does, but they know. And menus and stuff, they know I'm going to be salivating. So.
Oh, that's great.
It's good stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Roger, this has been great. I'm so excited that you're part of season 3 with our That's So Savvy business of food because you've been super savvy and super successful. So I'll be watching to see what comes next.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I've really enjoyed spending time with you.
This has been fun. Thanks so much for tuning in to That's So Savvy podcast, the savvy business of food. I'm Nancy Aichholz, and I hope today's episode left you happy, energized, and maybe even a little bit hungry for more. If you loved what you heard, make sure to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and share this episode with your fellow foodies and founders. You can also find bonus content, behind-the-scenes stories, and more at thatssosavvy.com, on our Substack, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, And follow us on Instagram at That's So Savvy Podcast. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and stay savvy.
What's nicer than a great big plate of fresh asparagus all by itself? It's the most marvelous way to begin a meal. And I think it's just irresistible.
On the next episode of That's So Savvy Podcast, we're diving into the extraordinary world of one of the most iconic figures in American culinary history, Julia Child. And joining me is someone who knows Julia's legacy inside, out, and backwards, Todd Shulkin, Executive Director of the Julia Child Foundation. We talk about Julia's infectious spirit, the stories people don't know, and how the foundation is carrying her visionary legacy into the future.
She's the last person you would cast, at least in central casting, to star in a cooking show. She's too tall. She has a funny voice. She's goofy, like not at all what would be on paper. But because of that, she's so relatable. And then she was so authentically herself and so enthusiastic. Those all made her beloved.
If you adore Julia Child like I do, you love stories about passion and purpose, or you just want to be inspired, this episode is absolutely for you. Don't miss it. Coming out soon on That's So Savvy Podcast.